How's it going, Jets fans? My name is Alex with my co-host here, Ryan Moran. Today we want to take a look at CJ Mosley setting some lofty goals for this New York Jets team during the 2022 season. Now, we are all excited about the Jets. Yesterday we talked about Elijah Vera-Tucker and why we think he can be an all-pro guard in the future. And CJ Mosley is, going into multiple seasons with the Jets now. Had a decent campaign last year coming off injury and whatnot, but I do think that, his expectations for this Jets team might be a bit lofty, but I appreciate the excitement and the optimism from him. The Jets stud linebacker and honestly one of their best players. Definitely started last year a little bit slow, but picked it up as the year went on. He finished the season with some really good grades, especially as a tackler. But only to be expected after coming off a season where he didn't play. So it's pretty exciting to see him kind of returning to his normal self. Run defense was not great, but his tackling, definitely fell off a little bit. I think this year bouncing back after a full season of experience. Now the team has a little bit more talent. Of course, Carl Lawson's coming back. You got some better defensive pieces in the secondary. I think this is an opportunity for the Jets defense to really establish themselves as one of the better units in the league, especially from a pass rush and run stopping standpoint. You still got Conan Williams. You still got John Franklin Myers. Like we said, Carl Lawson and a bunch of other good defensive tackles. So now CJ Mosley, let's see what he can do year 3 with the Jets now. So right? Year 3? Am I wrong?
He signed in March of 2019, but obviously opted out in 2020. So it's confusing.
Right, okay. It is. Yeah. That COVID year, man, really just throws me off every time, especially with contracts. Trying to figure out contracts that were like made before the COVID year is just annoying as hell. Like, because a lot of that money gets reset for the next year, right? So if a player opts out, the whole contract gets pushed an extra year, and then teams are like, well, sometimes we don't want that player for that extra year. We were hoping that they would be gone by this time, because the people that did play, the team still goes on, and then you don't have that opt out year, so you have to like figure out how to get a void year involved. It's just a whole mess. That COVID year was just absolutely terrible for everybody. But CJ Mosley's expectations, man. Let's talk about that, Ryan. Before we do, how you do today, my friend?
I'm doing great, Alex. I mean, love the expectations here from CJ, a respected team leader on the Jets. 2021 Jets team, Curtis Martin MVP, and guy who accumulated nearly 1,100 snaps, nearly 170 tackles, played in 16 games. Obviously, signed in March of 2019 to that blockbuster 5-year deal. Gets hurt, obviously, in that first game against the Bills when he's really doing so much for the team, and they end up losing that game when he goes down. And he opted out in 2020, of course, and last year was already 29 years old and in a different scheme that he had never played in before. And he came in obviously in great shape. That was pretty well documented last summer, and he played well. I don't think he was, bad by any means. I don't know if he was great either. I think he was good. And I think this year, he obviously spoke on the fact that last year, not just the defensive unit as a whole, but himself learning the scheme, getting acclimated to one another as teammates. And he definitely spoke on the fact that there is a difference this year, and the group having that understanding of one another within the scheme, knowing where they're all going to be. Quincy Williams has spoken on that himself. And you spoke on some of the improved talent, having a healthy Carl Lawson, Jermaine Johnson, Sauce, DJ Reed, Jordan Whitehead. There's so much improved talent. And, I wouldn't really expect anything less. I mean, CJ's 30 years old now, going into his 9th NFL season. I think he's spoken on the fact that he came to the Jets to try and help turn this thing around. And he said things publicly like, come here and expect to win. If you're afraid about losing, don't come here. He's obviously made some big comments like that I think you got to like it for a guy who's a team leader like he is. And I think this year, hopefully CJ can, like with his year of experience in the system now, be, even a more impactful contributor. I think, like I said, he was good last year, and you hope that this year, he's even better.
Yeah, I mean, he's leader on the defense, so that really is important for him to have a good season, But let's dive into some of his quotes, and we can react to some of those guys. But he basically said it's been good with the way the season is kind of, the offseason schedule has been unfolding so far. He said, and it's all part of the process of rookies coming in with COVID and everything that happened last year. They didn't really get the full experience. Everything is still virtual. But now with everything back to normal, guys get to be face-to-face. They get to hang out, communicate, do things with the coaches. I feel like this offseason has been really good for the Jets. So obviously a really good sign from one of the leaders on the defensive side. Went on to say, I'm really expecting playoffs or bust. Obviously, that's my goal every year, but I think it's something that's a realistic goal for our entire team and our coaches. Here's a take. I don't like that. I don't like, playoffs or bust mentality, because as an organization, the Jets aren't ready to be a playoff team. right? They're still raw. They're still young. They still have a lot left to do in terms of working on Zach Wilson's game, getting some of these rookies into place with, Sauce Gardner, with Jermaine Johnson, with Garrett Wilson, even the tight ends. You got a couple of new faces there, and Tyler Conklin and Jeremy Ruckert. So, and then you got Breece Hall, of course, and you got Mekhi Becton coming back. So, playoffs or bust is not how I'm thinking about this. There is a room for improvement, and I think that it shouldn't be playoffs or bust. It should be playoff and growth. Playoff or growth, because the Jets aren't going to be a bust, right? What really is a bust? I guess he's saying if we don't make the playoffs, it's a bust, it's not a good season. But I disagree with that sentiment. I don't agree with that. I think that if the Jets don't make the playoffs, they can still show that they've made tremendous progress. You guys are in the AFC East, one of the most difficult divisions in football every year. Now you got Tyreek Hill in your freaking division, for goodness sake. It's going to be hard to make the playoffs, even as a wild card, right? You got to battle. There's no way the Jets are winning the AFC East. Maybe they're a wild card team. There's an extra wild card spot now going forward, so maybe there's more of a probability of them making it in there. But the reality is simple. If they don't make the playoffs, I don't categorize that as a bust at all. In fact, I've been predicting that they're going to be a playoff team in 2023 and not this season. I think that they make big steps forward this year. They get Zach Wilson on the right page. A lot of quarterbacks, it takes them until year 3 to hit their stride. And I think that's what's going to happen for this Jets team. And you got a lot of rookies. Sauce Gardner is going to need that year. A cornerback is one of the most difficult positions to transition to the NFL. So I think he's going to need some time. So what are your thoughts? What do you think about, playoffs or bust? Because I personally disagree with that. I think the Jets are doing it the right way. Not making the playoffs is not a bust for me.
I would agree. I mean, look, if the Jets win 10 games and make the playoffs, I would be ecstatic, and every Jet fan would be. But I think you said it best there. This organization has gradually built this up over the last couple of years with Joe Douglas, the hiring of Robert Saleh, and the drafting of Zach Wilson last year, the youngest roster in the NFL last year. I think that's maybe a bit premature to say it's a bust of a season. I would agree with you on that. If they win 7 or 8 games and are competitive, they should be competitive until late November, early December, they themselves have put out there. Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh, that I think is a fair expectation. And they should be competitive. Those games against the Ravens, the Bengals early in the season, Jets are going to take that next step. They should be competitive in games late. But I agree with you. I think you can win 7 or 8 games and still feel good about the trajectory of this rebuild. And look, if they do ultimately win 10 games and make the playoffs for the first time since 2010, I don't think anyone would be complaining about it.
Yeah, definitely not. So he went on to say regarding, just the camaraderie and the consistency of these guys. He said last year, everyone was kind of learning this system. Each other, I guess everybody's learning the system. This year, coming into the offseason, you can tell guys already know it, and we're 2 steps ahead of where we were last year as far as being in the playbook. We know what we have to do. Guys are comfortable, and now it's all about getting out there and making plays and executing. So I think that's going to be the biggest step for us this year. Everybody having that confidence in what we're doing and being able to execute the plays. So he does have a good point there, saying that having that extra year, now that they know the system, they understand, it's a lot easier to help the rookies out in that sense as well, because, for obvious reasons, they have more knowledge about the system. They can kind of correct, Sauce, this is what you have to do. But then I'll go as far as to say, DJ Reed has no idea about the system, right? He doesn't know what the system looks like. Sauce Gardner has no idea what the system looks like. So how confident can we be in them to make impactful impact on this team in year 1? I'm not so sure what the value they're going to provide, but I do think that it's going to be a lot better than what they had last year, considering the secondary was composed of mainly rookies and just unproven talent. I think that Sauce, while unproven, is the best talent they have in that secondary, and I think he could be tremendous over time. I think DJ Reed is going to provide a lot of immediate value. But at the end of the day, it is a different system, so it does take time. But hopefully CJ Mosley helps in kind of getting everyone on the same page and being that leader in the locker room and on the football field. But yeah, that's kind of my perspective. I don't think that this is going to be a playoffs or bust type of season. I think this is a growing season. I think this is a perfect opportunity to take 10 steps forward, get really close to the playoffs. Look, if you make the playoffs, that's even better, right? That's exactly what you want. But if you don't, I think the team's going to compete. I think that we're going to see better versions of everybody. I think the system is going to be a lot better because the knowledge they have in it, and they're going to start to build on top of it and add the additional layers. But year 2 of a rebuild, some teams can expedite that process. We've seen the 49ers do it. We saw Cincinnati do it last year, but like you need generational talents to pull that off. Like you need Joe Burrow as your quarterback to pull that off. Is Zach Wilson Joe Burrow? No, of course he's not. Can he be as good as Joe Burrow? We're going to find out, right? But as of right now, everybody knew Joe Burrow was coming to the NFL and he was going to provide immediate like stardom. And like that was not even a question. Like Zach Wilson was always going to be a little bit of a process to get him to where he needs to be, but he has the potential to get there. It's just going to take a little bit of time. So with that being said, like, I know you said before, like you kind of agree with that, but what do you think the probability is the Jets actually make the postseason?
I think you never say never. I mean, you just look at the Bengals last year making the Super Bowl. Like, I don't think anything in the NFL these days is too far-fetched. I think it's a league that's built on parity, and I think every team has a chance. The Jets had this exciting offseason, and I wouldn't be shocked. Like, look, as I stated earlier here, I mean, Joe Douglas has said it himself, this team should be competitive until late November, early December. So, like, I guess it's really not that crazy to say that 9-10 wins and making the playoffs should be the expectation. I think in terms of like a true bust season for the Jets would be like a 5 or 6 win season. And they're not even competitive against these really good teams. Like you want them to be like they were against the Buccaneers and the Bills the last 2 games of the season. You want them to be in those games and ultimately take a couple of those games this year like they did against the Bengals and the Titans. So I think that's the growth that you really want to see, just competitive football, these young players continuing to grow. You obviously spoke on some of the new players. I think the main good thing with guys like DJ Reed and Jermaine Johnson is that they fit the scheme perfectly. Even somebody like a Jordan Whitehead, who I think is going to have a specific defined role that, he's here to serve and help this run defense, help just with his attitude, the physicality he's going to bring. So I think that the talent is there. There's obviously more time in the scheme for all the guys who were with the team last year. So I think that, ultimately we've spoken on it. I think 7 to 8 wins, big growth from Zach Wilson, the coaching staff, the rookie draft class last year, and hopefully some of these first-year players like Sauce, Garrett Wilson can really make an immediate impact. And look, nothing to me is ever too crazy in the NFL.
That is true. We've seen very crazy things happen in the NFL, and I think the Jets making the postseason definitely isn't one of them. I would not be surprised, but I do think that it's going to take one more year of development to get to where they need to be, and that's okay because I think prolonged success over immediate success is what dynasties are made of. You know what I mean? Like getting to the top quickly usually means you made a lot of poor decisions that like it's a win now, right? You got to win now. But I think the Jets are doing it the right way. They're building, they're, gradually taking steps forward. They're adding the right pieces. They're coaching them up. They're okay with them making mistakes. And ultimately, like that's how you get prolonged success. And I think the Jets are in a place to do that. So are they going to make the playoffs this year? I would probably say no. But are they going to take big steps forward and set themselves up for the future to be a great team for a long time? I would say yes. And that's, I think, the best way to put it. But I know CJ Mosley is just being positive, so I do respect that, of course. But guys, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like and subscribe. As always, make sure to drop a comment. Much love, as always. And we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Jets episode.